Money, mobsters, and maniacs run the streets of Gotham following the events of Matt Reeves' The Batman in Max's new hit TV show, The Penguin. The narrative highlights the rise of one of Gotham's scummiest crime lords in a suspenseful, action-packed, twist-filled 8-episode season. Is The Penguin a spin-off sensation with power to stand alone? Find out on this week's episode of Television Tuesday, the show where we talk TV and tell you all about it. I'm your host, Kael, and today I'm looking at The Penguin. No, not Danny DeVito. Right off the bat, I would say this show sets a new bar for spin-offs of comic book shows, movies, stories. This show handles the character and the narrative really well while also handling its own narrative really well. The inclusion of so many inspirations, high-level writing, and insane execution are what kind of set it apart from a lot of the comic book media you're going to be seeing. And I'll say that it's awesome that we finally have this classic, definitive iteration of the character on screen, and Matt Reeves pulled a lot of inspiration from the Arkham series when creating this character, and you can see that they lean even further into this with the show. Because, Arkham Penguin is the best version of the Penguin.
I only take the best. And today, best means whoever can kill you.
I always loved the arms-dealing, drug-running, double-crossing crime lord that we got in the Arkham games. I always felt like it was this version of the character they had thrown all of the good Penguin ideas into, and then boom, here we are with that kind of character in live action. So I'm a really big fan of Colin Farrell's version of the Penguin. Anti-hero movies and shows are constantly blowing up. Some of my favorites being Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, Better Call Saul, Uncut Gems, Good Time, Deadpool, Joker. All right, you get it. And just to go into some spoiler-free thoughts, I think The Penguin is amongst some of the best of these stories. Just the arc that you get from beginning to end, even starting in The Batman, I really loved. And I'll say this, give that boy Colin Farrell his Emmy. He masters the nasty, sleazy, untrustworthy character that is the Penguin. But besides just taking a look at old Oz Soprano, or Oz Cobb, I think the show works in all of the ways that the Batman did, with a similar but different cinematic style, really putting some utilization on that location and environment that is Gotham City used from the Batman, and references to characters and so on. It is a continuation. We still live in that similar environment with a similar style, but it does some of its own things here, and I really like that. There's been so much comparison to other things when talking about the Penguin that I don't feel like enough people are just looking at what we have and how it's a little bit different. We'll get into some of that. And without looking at this as a standalone series, just looking at it as a continuation of the Batman, I think it is killer. But to look at this further, we're gonna have to go into the spoiler zone. So unless you want Oz coming to your house and taking what you got, you better click off this video. I'll start with the connection that everyone drew, including myself and the promotional team for the Penguin, which was that there is so much inspiration taken from The Sopranos. And, that's true. We take these two New Jersey Gotham mobsters who are willing to shatter that moral compass when it comes to getting something for themselves, or sometimes the people around them. In both shows, we see their kid selves in similar manners. Both kids even look up to older mobsters, and both characters end up having this big center stage focus on their mother. And surely, there is probably a whole video to be made on things that the Penguin did that took inspiration from The Sopranos, but I want to look at one of the biggest differences, and I think this is something that does make the show stand a little bit on its own, something I really enjoyed. Just a different take on. This being who they are at their core. Oz has pushed everyone away, even killing his brothers in his youth. Tony, on the other hand, does care a little bit about his family and working through his trauma. We see attempts at the least. So to get down to it, the biggest difference here is that Tony, until she dies, wants to kill his no-good mother. But Oz's mother, Frances, wants to kill her no-good son. This flips the narrative around, and I had a lot of fun with this. And it's a story that, because I had seen The Sopranos, I kind of thought I knew where this was going until you really don't at the end. But enough with the Sopranos talk, unless I want to come back to it. Let's break down the plot, the characters, and then take a look at the lead up to the Batman 2, which I am so excited for. I genuinely enjoyed the story here. I think there's a lot to be said about tension, the characters, and trust. And I'll start by saying this. Penguin is a bad man. I'll say that again. Oz is a bad man. We knew that from the Batman movie, but let's take that out of the equation. Let's just look at the show for a minute. From episode 1, we see him switch up on Falcone's son. Then he flips the script on Maroni. Again. Then Sophia, the gang leaders, his mother, his brothers. And when we finally come down to Vic, it really shouldn't surprise you coming from Oz. Because Oz does not care about the people around him. But he'll even lie to everyone, including himself, to make you think that he does in order to get what he wants. Oz is the definition of a sociopath. And props to the writers. I said that there's very high level writing in this show, and they could have easily copped out, let Vic live, had Penguin, try to be that father figure to Vic, and maybe even shoehorned bringing Vic around for the Batman 2. He's a character that all the fans loved, but when it comes down to the true character of Oz, he couldn't let Vic live. It's just truly not his character. Let's take a look at what he did to his mother. I think this is very important for his character. Oz nearly dies hundreds of times trying to keep the promise to his mother that he's going to put her up in luxury. Well, really he does this because he wants luxury, and he figures if he has it, he can share it with his mom. What brings me there is this. Frances makes Oz promise to end her life if her condition gets worse and, essentially her mind isn't good enough for her body anymore. But Penguin is too focused on putting her up in some window looking out of a penthouse, focusing on his words and not hers. It's really heartbreaking that he can't listen to what she wants because all he hears is what he wants. It's really sad to see the tear drop down her face at the very end. But all of this applies to the other characters in the show as well. Let's look at Sophia. And we see he's been doing this to Sophia for years now, as he's put her in Arkham twice, killed her brother, and hell, I've lost count of every time he lies to her or goes behind her back. And look at Maroni. We know he flipped on him in the Batman for the big drug bust, and he convinces Maroni to let him do it again as soon as this show starts. And this time he gets the better of him, kills his family, and they end up duking it out at the end of the show. The fight with Oz at the end was crazy, and I never thought I would hear Mr. Krabs say mother. I lost it at this moment. Now that we've talked about some of the other major characters in the show, it's time to circle around to Victor Aguilar. They have such a relationship in the show, and it builds throughout, and you would think that Oz cares about him. There's the scene where they takes him to dinner and learns about his family, and they just kind of see eye to eye because they're from a similar situation. The show makes fans love Vic. And at a certain point, I think you start to care about Vic more than you do Oz. But it can be argued, I think, that Oz does care about Vic. This is one of the reasons he has to die. Oz starts to see himself in Vic, especially as Vic starts to step up his game a little bit. He gets all the crime lords together. He even saves Penguin at one point in the show and then is able to get him back off of his feet and motivate him at the end. Oz starts to see himself in Vic. And in that sense, I think he starts to fear what Vic could become if he keeps him around, so he has to put him down. And sadly, I think Vic's story stands to say, don't dabble with evil. Let the bad things in life go and don't try to cheat your way to success because you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. And that just is the story of Victor Aguilar. So yeah, Oz is a bad guy. But what does that mean for the show? Well, I think it creates even more tension, because in the beginning of the show, we are rooting for Oz when confronting the family, protecting his mom, and fighting turf wars. But when he shows us that he's unredeemable at the end of the show, I think we're able to move him back over to that villain category of our minds, just in time to switch sides for our protagonist of the Batman 2. In fact, I think everyone's now hoping that Batman's gonna kick the shit out of Oz in the next movie. But I think this standalone season serves to show as another character story of the anti-hero villain type character. And I think it worked, and it served this story as well. So let's go ahead and switch gears for just a moment and talk The Batman 2. And let's take a look at what some of this sets up for the future, because the ending of episode 8 has a couple of little sprinkles for some further setup, which I did not expect at all. And we'll start with the obvious. Penguin's on top now. He's a larger player than he was before, and he's kind of sitting as the new kingpin of Gotham. Thanks to Vic, he's unified a large part of Gotham's crime underworld and has a lot of them on his team. We also see a scary connection with Selina Kyle and Sophia linking up as the daughters of Falcone, and although Sophia's in Arkham, you gotta think that could be a dangerous duo, not a dynamic one. We also know that Sophia's locked in Arkham with the Riddler and the Joker, and there's a lot of different ways that could go. And finally, we'll go into the reference towards the end of episode 8 that everybody is starting to freak out about. And that's that the curtains look like owls in the courtroom scene where Penguin talks to Councilman Hattie. And I think it's important to note that Hattie in the comic books is one of the more corrupt mayors Gotham's seen, and usually winds up in debt to Falcone or Penguin. And I thought it was really cool that Penguin comes to him to pin everything that happens in the show on Sophia. Some people even speculate that the court is already kind of pulling strings and making things move, and that Hattie could already be working with him, and that Penguin wants in. I don't really think that's the case. I don't think the court would want anything to do with Penguin unless they're using him. So that could get messy, but the Court of Owls reference is definitely there, and I don't want to leave out that when the first Batman film wrapped production and Robert Pattinson stood up from his seat screaming, "Let's go make a sequel," he was asked, who would the villain be? And he said that in his comic book research, one of his favorite stories was The Court of Owls, which is also one of my favorite books, because it's such an awesome Batman story. And I fear to say that they're here, probably. But I think with rumors that Colin Farrell signed on for multiple Batman films, we may not get the court until like a third film. A lot of people are even speculating that if the court plot is already in motion, that could be where Batman is through all of this. And while I don't think that's a terrible thought, I just really don't think it's true. I do, however, love that we see the bat signal light up in the sky at the end, and I think that's just a great sign that, you know, the Batman 2 is underway, it's coming, we'll get there sooner than later, and he's probably out there if Gordon's flipping the signal on. So with all of these things in mind, let's wrap back to the question asked in the intro of this video. Is it a spin-off sensation, or does it stand well alone, or does it do both? Well, absolutely, I think it does both. I think it's a great continuation of the story, but it stands alone way stronger than I imagined it would. That is why they didn't put Batman in this show. Without the Batman aspect, this is another Breaking Bad, Sopranos type show where they want you to root for the villain as long as you are willing to. Then, when your hero winds up being this terrible man, you're just so heartbroken that you're watching the rest of the show. And on top of this, I think it's just an amazing continuation of a character we saw in a movie. And Colin Farrell's Penguin is just on its way to becoming one of the coolest portrayals of a comic book character. And, you know, that's why I scored season 1 of The Penguin a 9 out of 10. Really loved this show for all the reasons talked about. I think the characters are really strong. I think the plot's really strong. The stakes are strong. And ultimately, there's just enough to keep me watching. And I watched The Batman 2, and I hope they make Penguin Season 2, which is an idea that's being flirted with right now. So can't wait for all that. I hope you enjoyed this review and this episode of Television Tuesday. We have more episodes like it. We've done shows like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. We do movies on Studio Cinema Saturday. We've just done Terrifier 3. And we make movies of our own here at Studio 24. The Ties That Bind just came out. It's a 38-minute long film that revolves around romance and horror. I hope you're staying tuned for all of that Studio 24 content. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Keep up with Studio 24. I'll be waiting here for you. Like the video, comment on it, or I'm gonna get you. I got you.